and welcome back to my channel. So today we have a high impact winter storm that will hit the DC region this weekend, Saturday through Sunday. So this will be a huge winter storm that will encompass almost half of the country from New Mexico to Maine with winter storm warning. And as you can see right now, the National Weather Service is forecasting around 10 to 11 inches in the DC region. However, that total may rise as that only goes to 7 p.m. and most models say that around 7 p.m. at this Sunday, precipitation will still be ongoing, so the 11 inches will probably not be the final total. So, as you can see here, we kind of have a snow hole in the Washington area again, mainly because of the coastal low that is pushing north along the coast. That is feeding in warm air along the upper levels, which creates kind of a warm wedge that causes some sleet and that cuts back on our snow totals. So this is the GFS model right now, and as you can see, the storm system develops through the Midwest and then it moves east and it gets to our area around 1 in the morning, and very heavy snow until around 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then at that point, some sleet may start to mix in, especially south and east of the DC Metro Beltway area. And as time continues to go on, it continues to sleet. And then one final heavy burst of sleet, a heavy burst of snow. And then by Monday, 7 a.m., we're all said and done. So the GFS, all said and done, gives us around maybe 18 inches. I don't think this will be a 2 foot, 3 foot, 22, 30-inch storm. However, it would probably rank in one of the top 10 storms in the DC area. However, the GFS model is also the most unreliable model this winter, but it's also been the most persistent, saying that the low pressure will not travel up the Ohio Valley as the Euro has been saying. So as you can see here, the Euro has a primary low pressure track up the Ohio Valley. Again, notice the extremely heavy snow that is occurring from 1 in the morning. So that's maybe up to 2 inches an hour. So that snow will stack up extremely quickly, especially when the temperatures are in the teens. And 1 inch of liquid precipitation is around 20 inches of snow. So if we get around half an inch to 0.6 inches before it goes over to sleet, we can probably see conceivably maybe 10 inches to a foot, and then maybe more depending on how much we mix. And by 1 p.m., so the sleet line is at the DC region right now, so this might need to be ironed out later. However, we can see a coastal low. This is a Miller Type B setup where energy transfers from the Ohio Valley over to the mid-Atlantic coast. We see the primary low continue to track up the Ohio Valley. This is where the mixing becomes an issue, as the warm wedge from the primary low in Tennessee draws up Gulf Coast moisture up into the DC region, creating a sleet belt. This freezing rain is overstated. This will not be an extremely deep layer of warm air by any means. It will most likely only be around 1 or 2,000 feet deep, and there will also be a thick layer of cold air around 5-6,000 feet deep below that warm layer. So that warm wedge will probably create a sleet kind of situation. It probably won't create a freezing rain or ice type of situation, which is good news, but South and Central Virginia may not be that lucky. And as time continues to go on, we see the low transfer its energy off into the mid-Atlantic coast around Boston. And then when all is said and done, the Euro gives at a 10-to-1 ratio around like 7 to 9 inches. However, it's a 10-to-1 ratio. The temps don't line up. So then we could probably see 10 to 13 inches of snow. And this is not counting sleet. Probably another 1 to 2 inches of sleet on top of that snow. So maybe when everything's said and done, we could probably see a foot to 15 inches of stuff, frozen stuff on the ground. I say stuff because it's not fully snow, it's not fully sleet. It's going to be a combination of both, which is going to create a big traveling hazard, as the NWS has outlined here. So we are at a level 4 out of 5 impact here, so we can expect dangerous or impossible driving conditions. This is probably will be pretty dangerous driving in the morning hours of Sunday, as that snow is coming down at maybe 2 inches an hour. And the temperatures will be extremely cold. Like the temperature will be around 17 to 20 degrees, and then it'll warm up to around 25 degrees in the immediate DC area, with colder in the north and west. So that ratio will be 15 inches to 1 inch of liquid. So that snow will stack up very, very quickly. And as we can see with other models, we can look at the more high resolution models, such as the North American model. So again, we have the precipitation coming in from the west through the Ohio Valley. Now, this is kind of an inconsistent run. I'm not sure if there's going to be a big gap here, and the timing is also not consistent. So this needs to iron stuff out. Now we can see with this run we have heavy 1 to 2 inch an hour snow rates. The sleet bulge come through the DC area, switch back to very heavy snow. I think the sleet bulge might not be that deep, might be entirely snow up until around 1 p.m. Primary low comes up the Ohio Valley, and then finally we get the secondary low off the Atlantic coast, and we have a big time sleet storm, and that's where the run ends. However, if we look at the Canadian high resolution model, which is more reliable in kind of cold weather setups, we can see very, very heavy snow coming through in the pre-dawn hours. We have some sleet right around the DC area. I don't think this will be sleet, especially north and west of DC, where I'm currently at. So we may continue to see a pretty tight gradient, as we can see the sleet line kind of wavers around in the morning before firmly switching over as that primary low transfers over energy. Warm wedge drives north, which kind of cuts off the cold air for the snow, and it creates a big sleet kind of thing for us. And by 12 to 1 p.m., it's done wavering. We get sleet. The sleet continues pushing, maybe transitioning into some freezing rain. I don't see a lot of freezing rain, as the 800 millibar, which is around 3 to 5,000 feet up in the air, it's around 0 degrees. And also the 700 millibar, which is around 10,000 feet, is also around 0 degrees Celsius. So I could see some sleet coming through, but not exactly freezing rain. As time continues, the storm ends around 11 p.m. And this has been a model consensus thus far. And the storm moves off the coast. And this storm gives us around 8 inches of 10 to 1 ratio, but again, we could probably see up to 15 inches of frozen stuff on the ground, including sleet, when we convert the ratios to around 11 inches of snow and 3 to 4 inches of that sleet and snow mix. So it's going to be a mess in the DC region. And as we go north and west, as we can also see with the NWS, snow totals increase. So 14 inches north and west into Frederick, immediate metro around 10 to 11. The high end amount is 13 inches of snow. That might hold true by the end of the system. So around 1 a.m. or through 7 a.m. by Monday, January 26th, and that advisory will be issued tomorrow morning. So the low end amount is 5 inches for the DC region. So this will be probably a more impactful storm than the one last January. So this might create some pretty hazardous travel, especially north and west, entering that extremely heavy snow thump right before it switches to sleet in some areas of the DC region. Entire DC region is almost guaranteed to have a 6-inch snowfall, probably an 8-inch snowfall. I'd say that's a good chance, especially in the immediate beltway and north and west. 12 inches possibly in the beltway, but probably by 1 a.m. 18 inches would probably be a pretty big stretch in the beltway. I don't see that happening right now, but 18 inches could easily happen, especially further north in the mountains, as this does not account for all of the snow that this system will produce. So this storm will be a pretty dangerous storm, and then there will probably be an update coming tomorrow. And as we can see, there's a big area of winter storm outlooks for high impact or maximum probability of exceeding warning criteria 80%. That is pretty impressive. At least this has not happened, or something on this scale has not happened since probably 2018 or that big blizzard in 2016. Also, something worth noting is that the hurricane hunters are also sampling this storm. So we have a hurricane hunter going into the Baja low, which is the southern piece of energy that will combine with the northern dry piece of energy that will help to create the storm. So we have a hurricane hunter sampling that low pressure, and then we also have a hurricane hunter flight sampling the Gulf of Mexico for moisture content to see how good the environmental conditions are to transport the moisture from the Gulf up to the DC, which creates these big storms. And this data will probably factor into the 0Z or the 12 a.m. runs of these models. So maybe tonight we get a shift, the sleet line moves north or south depending on what the data is collected. So hopefully tomorrow we can get a clearer picture, especially as the short range and high resolution models come into consensus and come into range better, and they can resolve finer details better. So there will probably be an update coming tomorrow, and thank you for watching.